Alright, I'm going to try this a different way. I tried going live on Wimkin, but apparently the audio wasn't working on the app, although I took another video on my camera on my phone just normally without going through the Wimkin app, and it worked fine. So I'm guessing there's some disconnect there between the app and the audio and whatever, and I'll have to check a couple of things there. Probably some permission somewhere that I forgot to do. But I really wanted to get this up because I've seen a lot of stuff on Wimkin lately, and forgive the kids in the background. We got neighbor kids over, and they're all downstairs watching some videos and stuff, hopefully educational, but probably some YouTuber. But anyway, a lot of stuff on Wimkin lately about the number 666 and Joe Biden, and of course his text is the 30330 or something like that. And people are doing some math and whatever, and people are talking about the microchip, and they're talking about how that's the mark of the beast and whatever. I've even been watching a series. Some of you may know him. Kent Hovind is an apologist, and I've been following him for a long time, probably a lot longer. I think the first thing I saw of his was on a videotape, like a VHS tape. So I've been off and on following him for a long time. He's a former educator, like me, science teacher like me, principal, not like me. I will never go into administration. And he does a really good job in the book of Genesis. When he gets out of Genesis, starts getting into theology, not so much. He tried to do a series, or he's in the middle of a series right now on his YouTube channel on Revelation, and he's talking about all the same stuff. He's talking about 666 and the mark of the beast being microchips, and we're about to enter the tribulation, and he's got his math worked out why it should be here pretty soon, in the next few months, next couple of years, something like that. And it's not great. It's not great watching those videos. Now, some of you might be saying, well, Ernie, who are you? What are you that you have the authority, or you have the wherewithal to contradict scholars? You have to contradict somebody like Dr. Dino or whatever. And I've actually spoken to Kent a couple of times on the phone. I wouldn't necessarily say we're friends, but our conversations have been cordial. He actually helped me out a couple of times in terms of being a school teacher and standing up against evolution in the classroom. He even inspired me to a small degree to become a science teacher. So I wouldn't say that we're enemies at all, and I would love to sit down and just chat with him. I don't necessarily need to debate him live, although I would be willing to do that on the book of Revelation and eschatology. But who am I to gainsay this? Well, the answer is I'm nobody. I don't have any formal education in Bible. I've never gone to what most people refer to as seminary. My own faith, we call it preaching school, because we don't have a clergy laity system per se. But I don't have formal training. I've just got 3 younger brothers and a dad, all who love the Bible, who love the Lord, and have been studying eschatology literally my entire life. My dad started studying it from before I was born, I really think, if I remember correctly. And then we got into it and took what he understood and expanded on it, all of it from the Bible. We really don't use commentaries. We're students of history. All of my brothers and I are students of history. Literally, my youngest brother is a history teacher at a high school in Texas. But all of us are big students of history. My mom was a history teacher. She's retired now. My dad was a history and math teacher. He was eventually superintendent of schools. He's retired now. But we're all very knowledgeable about history, just because we love to study it and talk about it. And then we love to talk about and study the Bible. And so I've written a number of articles. I've got my own website. I do my own YouTube channel. Swordmaster Publications, if you want to look that up. We're going through the Bible right now, and I've got Genesis, Exodus, and the first 12 chapters of Numbers up. We're just going straight through, verse by verse commentary. But honestly, I'm nobody, and you should not look to me for authority. What you should look at is the evidence in the scriptures themselves. And that's kind of what I want to touch on. You can see here I've got Revelation pulled up, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about some things extraneous to a little bit of history, but then I'm going to pull us into the text itself and show that 666 isn't a big deal. It's definitely not as big a deal as what everybody is trying to make it out to be. And I'm going to show that the mark of the beast isn't what everybody thinks it is. It's not going to be microchips or something. I'm not saying I'm ever going to get microchipped. I have no interest in the government having that level of knowledge about me or control over me, especially if it ends up coming to revolution time. Thomas Jefferson said that a little bit of I don't think he used the word revolution, but a little bit of revolution every now and again was a good thing. A rebellion, I think, is what he used. I think he said rebellion. So we might come to that point. Especially if our governors and our national government becomes too out of control. It's going to come to that, I think. And I think the military will support our side because they're defenders of the Constitution first. But, the Bible doesn't have anything to do directly or prophetically with what's going on today. And so that's what I wanted to address. So a little bit of history real quick. The short version is that the number 666 refers to Nero Caesar. There is a video you can watch. I might link it in the comments below this video by a couple of guys that go by number file. Number, of course, being the numbers, and then file comes from the Greek word that we use for love, like Philadelphia is the city of brotherly love. That's where the word comes from. It's from the Greek. So they're lovers of numbers, and they have a video. If you look up number file, number PHILE, and then you type in 666, they do a great video on it. One of the guys talks about the roulette wheel, and then the other guy talks about the number 666 as it relates to the Bible, and he hits it spot on. Shows very, very clearly from the gematria, that's the letter number equality that they did back in that time, why 666 corresponds to Nero Caesar, Neron Kaiser. And so you can do that. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more from a historical context and from a contextual context of what is Revelation really about, and show that everybody's all freaking out about nothing. In fact, the doctrine of premillennialism and what all of this stems from is really only about 150 years old. It comes from Darby and Schofield and all of that. Before that, most everyone was some form of either they would take the historical approach to Revelation, that it's just kind of a general idea of how mankind was going to act throughout time. I don't hold to that. Or what they call a historical preterist view, which is that all of the things that the Bible directly talks about pertain to biblical times, and that we today live by the principles of the Bible and the rules of the New Testament. But sorry, I got a gnat up here, he's kind of annoying me. But we aren't subject to any prophecies. There's no specific prophecies left, save for just the end of time and the resurrection and judgment day. Hopefully he'll go away. But there's no rapture in the Bible. There's no tribulation left to go through. There's no time of wrath. There's no 1,000-year reign. None of that is available. It's because it all took place already. And that is the position that I hold to, and I'm going to show that here really quickly. So Nero Caesar was the 6th Caesar. If you start with Julius, you got Julius, Augustus, Tiberius, Claudius, Caligula, and then Nero. Nero ended up killing himself in 69 AD, but not before he commanded Vespasian, his general, to march on Palestine, because the Zealot Jews had rebelled against Rome, had taken over, had kicked the Herods out, and the Herods were in good with the Caesars, all 7 of them. But the Zealots took over. Herod Agrippa II fled to Rome, and Palestine rebelled. And there was a lot of uprisings during that time, actually. It wasn't just Palestine, but Palestine was the one that Vespasian was ordered to take care of. So Nero ordered that, and the Jewish War started in 66 AD, and then Vespasian marched down there. Well, then Nero committed suicide in 69, and right after that, 3 guys who had very weak claims to the throne tried to be Caesar all at the same time, and these guys were Galba, Otho, and Vitellius. And various things happened. Vespasian eventually went back and put down the civil war that was starting to brew, and all of those guys were taken out, and Vespasian became the 10th Caesar if you count those 3 guys, the 7th Caesar if you don't count those guys because they're not important or they're not sufficient enough to be a real Caesar in that sense. And so that's important to understand, and that fits in perfectly with all of the prophecies that we read about. A lot of people want to go to Daniel. A lot of people want to go to Revelation. In fact, if you go to Daniel, Daniel is having these visions about these 4th beasts, and he has one about an iron beast that's kind of like a dragon, an iron dragon, or some kind of a terrible iron dinosaur-like creature. It's iron teeth. He's very strong, and he's just stomping around, destroying everything. And it had 10 horns. And it says, Daniel says, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. I beheld till the thrones were cast down. The Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, the hair of his head like pure wool, his throne was like a fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. So that sounds a lot like things we read about in Revelation. In fact, we read about this beast again in Revelation. It's in Revelation 13, where we're going to go here eventually. So the thing about Daniel is Daniel interprets a lot of his visions for us. So we get some foundation. Of course, now Daniel is drawing on a lot of things from the book of the books of Moses, the Torah, whatever you want to call those first 5 books. And so we can interpret using only Scripture. We don't have to get all fancy schmancy. We don't have to talk about helicopters, which they wouldn't have known anything about, or any of that. We just look at it and we let the Bible interpret itself. And so, anyway, an angel comes by and he starts to explain it. And then Daniel says, I want to know about the 4th beast. He was different than all the others, and about the 10 horns that were on his head. And so, thus he said, the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom, that's Rome. Okay, the first kingdom was Babylon, second was the Medo-Persians, third was the Greeks. These are all easy to understand. The 4th beast shall be the Roman Empire, not some future world empire, the one world government that everybody's afraid of. We might end up with a one world government. I'm not in favor of it right now because there's nowhere else to go. But, we start colonizing other planets. I'm fairly certain Earth should end up with a one world government on Earth, as long as we can go to another planet and get away if they start being stupid. But right now, when there's nowhere else to go, Earth does not need to have a one world government. But anyway, so the 4th kingdom is Rome, and then it says, the angel tells him the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall rise, and another shall rise after them, and he shall be different from the first, and he shall subdue the 3 kings. Okay, so who are these horns? Well, these are the Caesars. Who are the 3 little horns? That's Galba, Otho, and Vitellius. And who's the horn that rises up and subdues them that's different than they are? That's Vespasian. Okay, so, and Vespasian prosecuted the war against the Jews, eventually turned it over to his son Titus when he had to go back and be Caesar, and Titus is the one that actually destroyed, he sacked Jerusalem and destroyed the temple. All of this is very common knowledge, very easy to understand in history. So when we get to Revelation 13, we start talking about these beasts again. Okay, and so we can talk about, and it stood upon the sand of the sea, saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Okay, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and so on. So we're starting to see these beasts. And then what do we see here? The beast was like a leopard. Well, that's like one of the beasts that we have in Daniel 7. And his feet were as the feet of the bear. Well, that's like a different beast. And his mouth was the mouth of a lion. Well, that's like the first beast. And then it says the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. Now, a lot of people want to sit there and they want to look at the dragon from chapter 12. And, of course, it says that the dragon is Satan, the devil, the serpent, all of that. And I agree that is what the dragon is called. But the dragon is a symbol and it represents something else. And so when the dragon gave the sea beast his power, this is not the dragon being the big, bad, awesome guy granting a little bit of power to the sea beast. What it is you have the dragon who actually represents the Jewish state with the 7 heads as the 7 Herods, giving up their power, granting Rome, you take over, we can't do it. And so the dragon is like, here, have my power, have my authority, please go in and defeat the zealots. And so they gave up everything. They gave his power, his seat, and great authority over the dragon's domain. So the Herods, Herod Agrippa II, is in with the Caesars. He's like, I can't control my people anymore because the Herods were puppet kings. And so the sea beast, which is Rome, goes in and is going to stomp some people. All right? And then there's a lot of things that go on, but then we keep going down, and then it says, verse 16, and he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Okay, so this is the mark, and everybody is thinking that this is going to be microchips. We're going to talk about why that's not going to be the case. All right, those are symbolic of things. Revelation is a book of symbols. I'll talk about that here when I get to Revelation 1 in just a minute. Revelation cannot be taken literally once you get into the visions, because if you do, then none of Revelation makes sense and you can't be consistent. If you try to say that Revelation should be interpreted literally, nobody actually is consistently literal with everything, because you have a woman who is in heaven with her feet on the moon and 12 stars as a crown. What does that mean literally? And nobody interprets that literally. So they say, well, this is representative of. Well, now you're in symbols, and now you're inconsistent because you interpret Revelation willy-nilly. Oh, I think I can't interpret this literally, so I have to default into being symbolic. And it just doesn't work out. You're inconsistent and incoherent, and then you just start making stuff up like helicopters and junk. And it's all eisegetical. You're just pushing meaning in because of a 150-year-old doctrine instead of the 2,000-year-old truth, or 1,900-year-old truth of what John actually wrote. But then verse 18, here's wisdom. Let him that has understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. Okay, it is the number of a man. His number is 666, or 666. Now here's the interesting part. I've already said that this is Nero Caesar, and you can do the gematria. I'm not going to do it here because it takes a little bit. Go watch the number file 666 video on YouTube. But the Peshitta version, or the Peshitta translation of the Bible, they were translating a little bit later, so Neron Kaiser later gets changed to Nero instead of Neron, and that N is dropped, but N has the value of 50. And so with the N gone, it became Nero Kaiser. Well, they knew who it was. They knew that the number referred to him. And so they changed the number to match the name to 616 rather than 666. But everybody thinks there's some kind of magical number or a magical power in this number, and they see it everywhere. And people who get it wrong and want to shock people or want to take part in some satanic power or whatever, they use the number, and they use it incorrectly without understanding, and every single one of them looks ridiculous. because they don't have any understanding of what Revelation is actually about. So let's talk about what Revelation is actually about. And I'm going to be brief. I have an article, or actually I have 22 articles up about Revelation. I have on my website, swordmasterpublications.fandom.com. You can go there. You can go through verse by verse every chapter of the book of Revelation. I've got way more than that up. Most of it's about apocalyptic stuff, the prophetic books of the Old Testament and the New Testament, pointing to the end of Judaism, because that's what it is. So I'm not going to go through this unless you just want to talk about it, and I'm happy to talk about it in the comments. But I'm going to give a brief overview here. It says, Revelation 1:1, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. Remember, this is John writing. This is John writing in the 1st century. The things that John saw would shortly come to pass. Here we are 1900 years later. That ain't no shortly. Well, God's time is different. God views things differently. 1,000 years is a day, and a day is 1,000 years. Nonsense. That passage from 2 Peter 3 is just talking about God's long suffering. If you use it as a mathematical equation or anything outside of what the immediate context is wanting it to mean, then you have to apply it consistently, and your 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth is going to be 24 hours, which is laughable. It's silly. God communicates to us in terms we can understand, or God is an ineffective communicator. So when God is communicating to us, he communicates from our frame of reference. So when he says that the book of Revelation, or the contents of the book of Revelation, are about things which must shortly come to pass, that's from the frame of reference of human minds, of human perspective. Okay? Shortly come to pass does not mean 1900 years later. And then he sent and signified. This word signified here means that it was given in signs. It was given in symbols. It was something that wasn't going to be straightforward. You had to have understanding, largely of the Old Testament, to get what it's saying. Okay? So John bears record of the testimony and all the things that he saw. And then it says, blessed is he that reads, and they that hear the words of this prophecy, and keep them, or keep those things which are written, for the time is at hand. What does it mean if the time is at hand? That means it's right about to happen. It doesn't mean wait for 1900 years. Anybody who's looking at the book of Revelation and does not pay attention to these time statements, they just gloss over them. The time is at hand when John wrote the book, or John is a liar. That's the only way to look at this. Or he was mistaken and God is a liar, the Holy Spirit is a liar. That's what this means. Shortly come to pass. Time is at hand. And then how many times does Jesus say, behold, I come quickly? Okay? Let's see it here, quickly. Oh, no, it's not in this one. I believe he says it in chapters 2 and 3. Let's see here. Yeah. I will come unto thee quickly, Revelation 2:5. Revelation 2:16, repent, or else I will come unto you quickly. Revelation 3:11, behold, I come quickly. Okay, and then you get to Revelation 22, and this is the other end of the book. And we get here, and he says, behold, I come quickly. Not 1900 years later, he's coming very, very soon after John writes this. It was urgent that John get this out. And then let's see here. The time is at hand. Verse 10. Here we are in chapter 22. The time is at hand. Not 1900 years later. It's going to be right now. It's right next to you. If something is at hand, like my big old cup here is at hand, it means it's right by my hand. It's near. It's close. He that is unjust, let him be unjust still. Filthy, filthy still. Righteous, righteous still. And holy, holy still. Why? Because they don't have time to change anymore. That time is past. Behold, I come quickly. And then, let's see here. And then again in verse 20, last one. Surely I come quickly. And so over and over again, God, Jesus says, the time is at hand, shortly come to pass, quickly, quickly, quickly. Now the biggest one that I think is absolutely incontrovertible, if that doesn't do it for you anyway, is if you look at the book of Daniel. Daniel is told to seal up the vision and prophecy. Okay, Daniel chapter 9. Nope, that's not it. There it is, Daniel chapter 12. He's told twice in Daniel chapter 12. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and the knowledge shall be increased. So he's supposed to shut it up until it was time for these things to come about, to the time of the end, the last days. And then again in verse 9 he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. And if you understand... Daniel says, And I heard, but I understood not. Then I said, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he says, Go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed to the time of the end. Many shall be purified, made white, and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. And then he gives this time period of that we see numbers repeated. From the time the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that makes desolation, that's in Matthew 24 and the parallels, the abomination of desolation, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he that waits and comes to the 1,305 and 30 days, so 1,335 days. But go thou thy way till the end, for thou shalt rest and stand in the lot at the end of the days. So why is Daniel told to shut up the thing? Because the time wasn't yet. It wasn't time. They weren't close enough to it. Well, then what is John told about sealing up the symbols of Revelation? I don't think it says seal. I think it says shut up. Oh, I clicked the wrong thing. Wrong filter. Because advertisements, right? Maybe it says seal not. It's been a while. Give me a minute. Weep not seals. Have not the seals. So it is. Here it is. Revelation 22:10. Right where I was. Should have said that. So John is told, do not seal the sayings of the prophecy of this book. Why? Because the time is at hand. Daniel was told to seal it up, because it was going to be another 400. If you look at Daniel chapter 9 and you understand the 77s, that's 490 years until the things that Daniel was prophesying was going to happen. 490 years. You had 7 years until Cyrus says, go rebuild the temple, till the time they actually rebuild the temple. And then 62 of those sevens, which represent 7 years, 62 sevens, brings you to a total of 483. And then Christ is crucified. And then the time period of the Jews of importance ends. And then you have the 40 years of wandering in the wilderness of Christianity as the antitype of the 40 years of the Jews wandering in the wilderness that we read about in the latter part of the Torah. And then you have the last 7 years of the Jews, where the Jews actually mattered, as God brings judgment to them. The last 7, the 70th 7, instead of the 69 that happened to them beforehand. Daniel's asking, what's going to happen to my people? And so that last 7, the last week, if you will, sometimes called week, the King James translates it as week, is the 7 years of the Jewish war. From 66 to the end of 66 to the beginning of 74 is when that war is prosecuted. When did Jerusalem fall? Halfway through. The numbers match up. The 1260 days, the times time and half the time, the 3.5 years, the 42 months. All of those represent the time from the beginning of the war till the time that the temple actually was destroyed in 70 AD. And then you had a time that came afterwards, between the fall of Jerusalem and the temple, where Titus uses the stones of the temple. Remember, Jesus said not one stone is going to be left on another, where Titus uses the stones of the temple and a shield of slaves, Jewish slaves, to build a ramp up to Masada, Herod's summer home up on a plateau. It was kind of like a fortress. They built a ramp up there. And then when they got inside, almost everybody had committed suicide, and that was the end of the war, when Masada was taken. And that was in 74 AD. It was the end of the Jewish Wars. So all of that matches up. Daniel is told to seal up those things because it was 490 years away. John was said don't seal up because the time is at hand. It was way closer for John than it was for Daniel. But here we are, 1900 years removed from the writing of Revelation, and people are freaking out that it's the end of time. And they don't understand what the last days are. That it doesn't have anything to do with the last days of the universe. It has to do with the last days of the Jewish system. 2 Peter 3 is about the end of the Jewish system. The first system, if you look at 2 Peter 3, the first system of the heavens and the earth, the heavens are the people who are rulers, and the earth are the people that they rule. Was the planet destroyed when the flood came? No. Was the sky destroyed? Was space destroyed? Was any heaven or the planet Earth destroyed by the flood? The answer is no. Who was destroyed? The people. The people were destroyed. The system that existed at that time was destroyed. And then a new heavens and a new earth was brought into play, and that was the Jewish system under Moses. And then that persisted for 1,500 years. And then what happened? They grew wicked, just like before the flood. And what did God do? He destroyed them with a flood. In this case, a symbolic flood of an army, the Roman army, but he destroyed them. He destroyed them by fire, it says. Fire is the sign of judgment. It's a symbol of judgment. And so the Jewish system was removed, and now we have the new heavens and the new earth of 2 Peter 3. The new earth are Christians, the people that are ruled over, and the new heavens is Christ as king. Premillennialism even denies that Jesus is king. Jesus is my king right now. I'm in his kingdom right now because I am a member of his church, a member of his bride, a member of his temple, a building block in his temple. All of those things go together. In fact, if you look one chapter back, a lot of people get this wrong too because they think Revelation is about the end of the world. They think that the city is some kind of literal city. John writes in chapter 21, "And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea." So this heaven and the earth are the people, like 2 Peter 3 is talking about. No more sea means no more separation between the Jews and the Gentiles. The sea always represented separation in the books of prophecy. And then he says, "I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband." Well, what is the bride of Christ? It's the church. It's the church. It's clear as day. And yet people want to think that this is some kind of literal golden city. Jesus didn't marry buildings. He didn't marry infrastructure and sidewalks. He married the church, the people, the called out, the ecclesia. And then some more things are seen. God is going to wipe away all tears from their eyes, going back to Isaiah chapter 65 and 66, talking about there not going to be any more death or sorrow or crying. This is talking about the persecution that the Jews were doing against the Christians. And then you get down to verse 9, "And there came unto me one of the seven angels, which he had the seven vials full of the seven last plagues, and talked with me, saying, Come here, I will show you the bride, the Lamb's wife." Who is the bride of Christ? Who is the Lamb? Jesus. Who's the bride's wife? It's the church. And so what's the angel going to show him? He's going to show him the church. And he carried me away into the Spirit to a great and high mountain, and showed me that great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God. What is the city? The city is the church. Is it literal? No, it's people. No more than the temple of the New Testament is a literal building that you can walk into. The temple of the New Testament is the church. We, as Christians, are the church, are the temple. It's not a literal building. It's a metaphor to help us understand what it is. Okay? You don't believe me? Fine. Let's let the Bible do the interpretation. Excuse me, I've been teaching all day, so my throat's a little dry. Hebrews chapter 12. What does it say? What does the Hebrew writer say? You are come to Mount Sion. You are come to Mount Sion. unto the city of the living God. So we're talking about the city, the heavenly Jerusalem that we just got finished talking about in Revelation 21, to an innumerable company of messengers. The word angelos is just messengers. Doesn't necessarily mean celestial beings like Gabriel. To the general assembly and church of the firstborn. All of these things are references to the same things. Mount Zion, metaphorically, is the church. The city of the living God is the church. The heavenly Jerusalem is the church. To innumerable company of messengers, that's us, the church. The general assembly and church of the firstborn, which are written in heaven, that's Christians, that's the church. And to God, the judge of all, and the spirits of just men made perfect. God is part of the church. He's the head of the church. Jesus, the king of the kingdom, is part of the church. We are his body. Can't separate the two. And to the spirits of just men made perfect. Who's that? Hey, that's saints. That's the church. That's Christians. And to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and the blood of sprinkling that speaks better things than that of Abel. Okay, so this is all referencing the same organization, the same group of people, the church, that Revelation 21. It all ties up together. It's nice and neat and easy to understand if you can get past your programming. If you can get past all of the things that you've learned from some guy standing up in the pulpit and just talking out his butt. Because that's all they're doing. They can't, listen to Kent Hovind. I like the guy. He's a funny guy, and I think he's great when he gets into Genesis and talking against atheists and evolution. He's horrible in Revelation. Half the time he's up there, well, I don't know what that means. Well, I don't know what that means. You got me. I can give you Hovind theory. That's eisegesis. Hovind theory is eisegesis whenever he inserts his own opinion instead of letting the Bible interpret itself. If you let the Bible interpret itself, Revelation is actually one of the easier books of the Bible to understand. The hard book of the Bible would be like the Gospel account of John or Romans. Romans is extremely hard to understand. Probably the hardest book in the entire Bible to understand, actually. But this idea that 666 and Joe Biden and the mark of the beast are all today. Joe Biden's today, obviously, but that those things are all related to things going on today? No. Now, could it be that some staffer in Joe Biden's thing, and maybe there is some secret connection to satanic rituals? Satan is a joke. Satan has been reduced from prince of this world to a ravaged beast, or a ravening beast. Remember, he's a roaring lion, walking about seeking whom he may devour. Right? He was a prince, and now he's just an animal looking for scraps. In fact, he's such a coward, all you got to do is resist him and he'll run away, because he's a flaming coward. And anybody today who wants to worship Satan is an idiot, because they're worshiping a coward that has no power. He has zero power unless you give it to him. He can't do anything. Seriously, you're going to pick the loser in the fight between the omnipotent God and some dude who has been reduced to worthless and coward status? Why? That's just a slight step above worshiping a rock that you shaped to look like an animal, which is just as dumb. If Joe Biden and maybe a staffer or whatever thought it would be funny or cute or subtle or some kind of whatever to connect the text number, the 30330 or whatever it is, to because of the 666, all that does is shows their ignorance of the Bible. All they have done, it's like looking to Dante and his book Inferno to try to understand biblical things and spiritual truths. Dante was a fiction writer. He wrote fiction. I might as well go get Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman in the Dragonlance Chronicles and try to determine spiritual truths of the universe, for all the good it would do me. Trying to say that 666 applies today and to Satan, and that somehow Satan is powerful enough to do some kind of world domination, something or another, is absolute ignorance of Scripture. And it's born out of fear. Premillennialism is a fear-based doctrine. And I don't have any. There's zero fear in my faith. God is omnipotent. He has already conquered. Jesus is already king. He has already redeemed the lost on the cross. And all we have to do is obey the gospel. Hebrews 5:4. Show you that because I know a lot of people just don't want me talking, and it's probably not a good idea to just listen to me, but we're going to go. All right, I said 5:4, 5:9. And being made perfect, he became the author. Let's talk about Jesus, because the Son, right? And being made perfect, he became the author of eternal salvation unto all them that believe, right? Because all you got to do is believe, faith only. No, it says all them that obey him. What do we got to do? We got to obey the gospel. What does the gospel say to do? Jesus said in Mark 16, he that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. Romans chapter 6 blows the faith only idea out of the water. It's when we are immersed into Christ. Yeah, we got to believe. We absolutely have to believe. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. Hebrews chapter 11. But faith only does nothing. Even the demons believe, James 2:19. But if you will obey the gospel, Romans chapter 6 and verse 16, to whoever you yield yourself to obey, whether sin unto death or obedience unto righteousness, that's whose servant you are indeed. And then Paul goes on to say, but God be thanked that you obeyed from the heart that pattern of doctrine. What did he just finish talking about earlier in Romans 6? Baptism. You obeyed that pattern of doctrine and were then made free from sin. When? When you obeyed the gospel. When you followed that pattern. What's the pattern? It's the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. Where do we conform to that pattern? When we are baptized. We go down to the water, we're buried with him in baptism, is what Paul says. Let me go there, because again, I don't want you thinking it's me making stuff up. I'm just quoting scripture here. So many of us were baptized into Jesus Christ, we're baptized into his death. There's the death. Therefore, we are buried with him by baptism into death, that like as Christ was raised up from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we should walk in newness of life. Where does this happen? When we're baptized. When we obey the gospel, when we conform to the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. For if we have been planted together in the likeness of his death, we shall also be in the likeness of his resurrection. You don't go down into the water in order to be saved, in order to be buried with Christ. If you're just doing it as an outward sign that you've already been saved, you're not doing it right. You might as well go swimming, because it's the same effectiveness. But if you go down into that water thinking that you're going to be buried with Christ, and it's in the water that you come into contact with the blood of Christ, have your sins washed away, and you come up in the likeness of his resurrection, and you are then a new creature, then you're doing it the way the Bible says to do it. It's not enough to be baptized. You have to do it for the reasons that God said to do it. Otherwise, you're not obeying. You're just getting wet. Same as going swimming. When I go swimming, I'm not being baptized. That's nonsense. The reason matters. Why you do something matters. The intent matters. And so, for us who obey the gospel, who follow what God has commanded us to, if you love me, keep my commandments, if we do what God has said, then he comes and makes his dwelling place in us. John 14 and verse 23. And there is no fear. The Bible even says it. I believe it's 1 Corinthians. See that he may be with you without fear. I want to say it's in one of the Corinthians here. Nope, I was wrong. I don't remember where it's at. It's late. But nope, that's not it. Might be without fear. Yeah. Anyway, somewhere. But there's no fear in Christ. There's no reason to be afraid. I'm not afraid of some microchip. I'm not getting it. My kids aren't getting it. I'm not even in favor of vaccines. Not afraid of some 666 number, because I know it was in the past anyway. And you know what? Instead of me waiting for Jesus to come and do whatever he's going to do after some fake tribulation, because that there's going to come a period and people are going to be saying, oh, it's a tribulation. It's the tribulation. And they're going to start counting out 3.5 years. And then it's going to turn into 4 years. And then it's going to turn into 5 years. And they're going to be like, where's Jesus? The tribulation has started. We're all being tribulated. Where's Jesus? And then they're going to start blaming God instead of picking up their guns and going to shoot people in a revolution to take back over this country. You can't have both. When we start being persecuted to the point, and I think we're pretty much there. I mean, look at Antifa, look at the rioting, look at the things that are going on. They're not coming down to the South yet because they know we got a lot more guns, but it'll happen. Especially if Trump wins, you know there's going to be a big fight. Okay, even if Joe Biden wins, they're going to be emboldened. And people are going to be waiting for Jesus after 3.5. I just got to hold on for 3.5 years. There's not going to be a rapture. Nobody's going to go missing. People are going to be freaking out about that. Why? Where's the rapture? The rapture should have happened. Or they're going to count out 3.5 years because they think the rapture comes after the tribulation, like Kent Hovind does. They're going to count 3.5 years, no rapture, 4 years, 5 years, no Jesus coming, no wrath. None of the things that they're looking for are going to happen because they aren't going to happen. Revelation has nothing to do with this. And they're going to start blaming God. And instead of blaming God, they should be blaming themselves for their ignorance and relying on somebody else to teach them the truth. And instead of relying on people, instead of relying on me, don't rely on me. Go look at the evidence. Go study for yourself. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not worried about the 666. I will tell you this. Some moron comes at me trying to take me out because I'm conservative, libertarian, whatever you want to refer to me as, or because I'm a Christian. They're going to find out that Jesus said he came to bring a sword and that we can take up swords to defend ourselves. And folks, I don't believe in minimum force. You threaten my family, I'm taking you out with maximum force. Alright, that looks like the school doing an all message there to me. I better read that message when I get to it. But thanks for listening. I know I went a lot longer than I expected to, but hopefully this will get you to think, will get you to hopefully understand, and I welcome questions. So we'll see you guys next time.